Smells like father.
Don't be a dick.
R2, we're back, of course, talking FF7 and also Final Fantasy 16 because we have something a bit different today. There's something, I think it's like a new thing they're doing on the Square Enix channel called Square Enix Party Chat. This first episode is Matt Mercer, voice of Vincent Valentine, and Ben Starr, voice of Clive Rosfield. So we're having like a crossover here of FF16 and FF7 Rebirth. I do believe they're going to do more of these based on the description of the YouTube video, which we'll read in a minute. I don't know if they're going to continue doing like FF16 and FF7 like crossover type shit like this, or maybe people from the same game, or maybe they could do like past voice actors like, 13 or 10, or, ones that have voice acting, obviously. Just talking with like other people from the voice acting community for Square Enix and or Final Fantasy. This first episode, it's pretty cool. Ben Starr's great. He did a fantastic job as Clive. He's hilarious on social media, so it makes sense to have him in there. Obviously, 16 just dropped on PC. Somebody from FF7 Rebirth makes sense too, since that game just dropped this year. And Matt Mercer's obviously iconic as fuck as a voice actor. So the description reads, welcome to Square Enix Party Chat, bringing together some of the talent behind our beloved games. Ben Starr of Final Fantasy 16, Matt Mercer of Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth sit down to discuss the respective characters, Clive and Vincent, video games, their careers in gaming, and more. So yeah, that's why I think there'll probably be more of these in the future. For one, it'd be weird to just do one of these, but also give it a title, Square Enix Party Chat, and talk about, the people behind their games. So I imagine this will happen in the future. Probably won't just be Final Fantasy either, but that'd be kind of interesting. Maybe get somebody from like another, Final Fantasy game, but also somebody from another like IP owned by Square Enix. I don't know what exactly. Also, Matt Mercer dropped this tweet yesterday that says, had the pleasure to sit down and just shoot the shit about gaming, voiceover, and Final Fantasy for a solid hour with the titanically talented the Ben Starr. This man is to be protected and cherished. So yeah, it's another big video for us to look at. It's an hour long. It's just under an hour, actually. I have only seen like one clip from this, I think either on Instagram or Twitter, I don't remember what, but it's Ben Starr talking about landing the role of Clive, which was a pretty interesting little watch. And I've seen like the very beginning, of course, just to make sure like the video downloaded properly, the audio synced, all that other shit. So yeah, we're going through this relatively blind. I don't even know at all what could possibly be worth talking about from this, but we can maybe get some cool behind-the-scenes stuff for Vincent and Clive and stuff like that. We'll do the usual of watching off camera, come back and talking about what I think is worth talking about. Let's hop into it. The video opens up with Ben asking Matt where he kind of started with gaming, what console, what games was he playing. He does say that he started with the original Atari 2600s where he first started playing, but his first actual console was the original Nintendo. And he talks about, a bunch of games he played, but the ones that really clicked first off for him were the original Dragon Warrior and the original Final Fantasy. Which is a big reason why I do love Matt as Vincent, because for one, that was a role he's wanting to get for a long, long time, but also you can tell he's like an actual avid gamer and a big fan of the Final Fantasy franchise.
When did you first start playing games? What did you play them on?
I got to experience the first Atari 2600 when I was very young, but the first real system that I had, that I owned, was the first NES. Introduced me to so many games that radically altered my future, but I remember Dragon Warrior and the very first Final Fantasy were the games that really kind of clicked in a way that I wasn't aware that there could be this long-running immersive narrative, and the first Final Fantasy on the NES was the game that really kind of drew my obsession.
I can, for the most part, kind of relate to Matt Mercer here in that I started with the NES as well, but I did actually play a little bit of Atari growing up. I met my best friend when I was younger in first grade, and he had an Atari. All I remember is Pitfall. I don't know if he had any other fucking games, so I did actually grow up playing the Atari a little bit, but I did start on the Nintendo. My uncle had a Nintendo. I started with like the original Mario, Super Mario Bros. 3. I know he had Karate Kid, and I can't remember the other games. And then eventually I went straight from Nintendo to the PS1. Unfortunately, didn't grow up playing the original Final Fantasy, and I didn't really play RPGs in general up until the original Pokemon, right? Pokemon Red on Game Boy is probably what first sparked my interest on the genre of RPG, and I think that probably did that for a lot of people too, and eventually hopped really into RPGs with like the PlayStation 1. Also, Matt talking about how like the first Final Fantasy kind of introduced him to the concept of like a long-running narrative in a game, and that's really RPGs in general, right? There's like a through line from beginning to end with the story. It's not as simple as like a Mario game usually. But I'd say FF7 was probably that for me, because I believe FF7 was the very first RPG I ever played. As far as I can remember, it's obviously kind of hard to think back that far. Ben goes on to mention they had a similar experience that Matt did, except one generation later, the PlayStation, but with Final Fantasy 8. So kind of a similar situation that I have, but it was FF7.
I had a very similar experience, but like probably one generation afterwards with 8.
Yeah.
Like, it's that, even though it's a much later entry, it forced me to go back and play the older games. But
I absolutely love Final Fantasy 8. I don't know where I'd put it exactly if I was doing like my top 5, top 10 Final Fantasy games. It is the one that's super, super nostalgic for me, but I didn't get to play all of it until like a later point in my life. I've probably told the story before on YouTube, I'm not entirely sure, and I actually did mention this very recently on Twitter, but when I was younger, I traded a copy of GTA Vice City for a copy of Final Fantasy VIII. So it gives you like a time frame for whenever I'm playing FF8 for the first time. It's definitely within like the first year or so of Vice City coming out. I'd already played it and like beat the story and stuff. It also shows you how much of a Final Fantasy fan I was even back then, that I was willing to trade this like brand new, more or less, PS2 game for a game that's, a couple years old at that point for sure. That's how like into Final Fantasy I was. That's how much I loved FF7. I'm like, here's another Final Fantasy. I've never played it before. I probably owned Final Fantasy X at that time, and I'm like, here's a brand new game. Give me FF8. When I traded from the person, I didn't realize that it was missing a disc, and it was specifically missing disc 2. So for a long point in my life, I could only play the first disc of Final Fantasy VIII, but I played the fuck out of it. I would beat it, and then like a couple days later, I'd start up a new playthrough, and to go from beginning to end of the first disc, just over and over and over constantly. So that first disc, I really, really know when it comes to Final Fantasy VIII. And it wasn't until I was like later teens, maybe early 20s, that I actually got to finally play FF8 all the way to completion. That goes on to ask Ben where he kind of started with his gaming, and he said he started on a Game Boy. They didn't have like a console growing up. Parents couldn't really afford it. It's not something they really had around the house, but he always carried the Game Boy on him. That he wanted Kirby's Dream Land, but instead he had Kirby's Pinball, which is a pretty funny story.
Yeah.
How did you start? What was your gaming, initiation?
Mine was a Game Boy. Like I always wanted a console. My parents just we just couldn't afford one. It wasn't just something you would have in the house. But they gave me this Game Boy that I would carry everywhere. And I still have it. I still have like this little set, and it has all the little cartridges in it.
That's awesome.
And so I was playing, I really wanted Kirby's Dream Land. That's all I wanted. I didn't have it. I had Kirby's Pinball, but it was good enough. And it was like, it's not the same thing.
Yeah. He's just like a funny dude to me. You can talk about anything and it makes it funny. Just the way he says like it was good enough is hilarious to me. I'm trying to make this video as short as I possibly can without like, leaving out too much good stuff. But he talks about how he eventually got a PlayStation. He had like Gran Turismo and Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 was too scary for him. And eventually his dad bought him Final Fantasy VIII, which he was rubbish at, as he says, which I can relate to. I had a little bit of history with RPGs at the time I played 8. Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 10, maybe some others in between there. And it's just so different that I was definitely kind of trash at it too. He mentions how he eventually got the hang of it and would go on to beat Ifrit finally in like the cave with like the first test you do or whatever. And it's just kind of interesting, like looking back on that. I don't know if he talks about this further as he goes on here, but it's kind of interesting that he was like stuck on the Ifrit fight all the time ago. Eventually he was able to overcome that, and all this time later, he voices a character who turns into Ifrit. I thought that was kind of poetic in a way.
And then my dad bought me Final Fantasy VIII, and I was rubbish at it. I was so bad at it. I didn't understand it. I had no language to understand what my relationship with this is going to be. For me, a game would take maybe 5 hours and it would be done.
Right.
But then I finally beat Ifrit in the cave, and then I realized there was this whole world, and then it kept going and it kept going and it kept going, and then 108 hours later, I've had one of the most transformative experience of my life.
I like the way you put that there, how like you get to a certain point in a Final Fantasy game and you realize there's a whole other world to explore. That's kind of a thing for a lot of the RPGs, right? That's a lot of our experience with like FF7, if that was like your first Final Fantasy game. Once you leave Midgar, right? That's one of the most like eye-opening experiences I probably ever had as a gamer. Once you like leave Midgar and you're on this fucking world map and I get to walk forward. I get to walk around the world and there's other like locations I get to go to. You're not just in this big ass city the whole game. I also love how much Ben Starr is a fan of Final Fantasy VIII, because I think he's gone on record as saying it is his favorite Final Fantasy. I've seen him like tweet out like a video or a picture or something talking about like FF8 remake or something, want that to be a thing at some point. So he's like an advocate for that, which I am too. I think it's a great game. I think it has a great story, great characters. The mechanics of it, the junction system and things are a little bit wonky, and I can understand people aren't necessarily fans of it. But I do think it's deserving of like a remake at some point. They could definitely tweak some of the shit that people don't like about the original release. He goes on to ask Matt if he's a fan of Final Fantasy VII, which is obviously a joke because he's obviously a massive fan of it. But he goes on to just talk about FF7 for a little while, and it's just, I like hearing people talk about things that they're passionate about. I can sit back and enjoy that. I want you to ramble and yap, as they say these days, but the thing that you love.
Speaking of PlayStation 1, Final Fantasy VII, did you like it?
Oh, you like it a little bit?
Did you like it?
Final Fantasy VII was rumored to be coming out on the upcoming Nintendo system that what became eventually Nintendo 64. And I remember seeing like the early release screenshots of like the demos of the chibi 3D lock and all these. We were going crazy about that, and then it was silence for a while. And then the massive news that Square was breaking from Nintendo and 7 was going to come out on the PlayStation. Like, what does that even mean? Being at that moment in time, we're having 1 through 6 and that certain type of expectation of what it was going to feel like, and 7 being so radically different and cinematic and just like really one of the first games that said, you think you know video games and you think you know movies. This is the first thing that really said, oh, what if they can be very similar? What if there is a bridge between the cinematic experience and the little gaming experience you've loved growing up? And it was just such an unexpected and incredible changing of gears of what storytelling could be in games for me, let alone so many people who were playing it at that time. It swallowed my existence. I learned to draw all the characters. I dressed up as Sephiroth for Halloween that year. I'll show you a picture after this.
I want to see it. All I'm going is, where are the pictures? Where are they?
Like, I'll pull it up.
Yeah.
We were so obsessed with it, and every day after school, I'd come back and I'd play again, and I'd played through multiple times, because in the first game, first playthrough, you lose Aerith, and it's this whole Aerith, as it is now, but it was Aerith back then, for the English translation, and on the internet, of course, rumors went abound, the early days of the internet, that you could resurrect her.
Absolutely.
And you had to do.
Ben is just so hilarious to me with like the ad-libs he's throwing in, like with the picture thing, and then right there where he talks about like, yeah, you can resurrect her, absolutely. Like, it's just like, I don't know, it's just funny as fuck, dude. I personally wasn't on like the early days of like FF7 on the internet. I didn't grow up with the internet up to a certain point in my life, so I didn't have all these like rumors about being able to revive Aerith. I never thought that was a possibility, which is kind of interesting, I guess, like perspective that a lot of people do have about FF7 original, like that I didn't personally have.
All these things perfectly, and so I played through a second time and a third time. I got like the date with Aerith and the date with Tifa and the gold sauce, and the date with Yuffie and the date with Barrett, and like to all these different ways that you had to do it to eventually get her to resurrect, and none of them were true. It was complete bullshit.
It's one of the things that I look back on that I wish I got to experience, where like I was seeing these rumors online about how you gotta do this and that and the other, and that then it'll bring Aerith back to life and she can be in your party, she's there for the story. And I wish I went through those like multiple playthroughs of the game trying to do everything perfectly. It would have been like a fun experience, even though it was, as he says, all bullshit.
But I never cared. It just been another excuse to play through the whole story again.
And right there is what's beautiful about the story he's telling right now. Even though it was all bullshit, it was just another reason to play FF7 again. Then goes on to talk about FF8 a bit, and like the first demo that came out for the game, and when you're booting it up for the first time, and like the music starts hitting. And he mentions how he gets chills as he's talking about it, and at the same time he was saying that, I was getting chills too, because I'm like picturing myself back in the day as a kid. Back then it wouldn't give me chills because it's brand new, I don't really know what's going on, but like put myself back as a kid and hearing that shit for the first time, it's definitely like a core memory of mine to a certain point, right? And it's just a testament to how good of a storyteller he is, that he put me back in that mind space and I got chills the same time he did.
And to your point about Final Fantasy VIII, like 7 was such a buildup of what that could be. And then I remember when the first demo for Final Fantasy VIII came out, the moment like it boots up and you hear the Fithos, like the chills. I'm getting chills now just remembering that moment you first watched that, Hinosek, boom, 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 and the music picks up and you have them riding on the ship, and like me and my friends all gathered at my place to pop it in for the first time and watch it together. And it was, once again, another like milestone gaming memory for all of us at that age to be there and watch the initial reveal of Final Fantasy VIII for us at the time.
Yeah, like I said previously, I just like hearing people talk about things that they're passionate about, and just how much you can tell that he is a fan of the Final Fantasy series, him like reminiscing on the early days of like FF8, and it's something I appreciate, especially for somebody that's working on a Final Fantasy game, right? That's voicing one of the prominent characters in the FF7 remake. Like, that's what I like, the fact that they're actually a true fan of the series. It doesn't necessarily matter for them to be like a good voice actor, but it's something I just appreciate.
To then kind of go from having this love of this franchise to then, obviously we enjoy them, but then to go from that to having the opportunity to be in it.
That's what's so cool about hearing these guys talk about this, is we kind of get through the video and hear them talk about how big of like fans they were of the franchise growing up and playing through like the series and shits, and then have an opportunity like all this time later to actually be a part of it. And they go and talk about it, like Matt Mercer has voiced characters in Final Fantasy games before. He got to voice characters in Final Fantasy 15, right? He also done voiceover work for some of the other Final Fantasy games throughout the years, like Type 0 and one of the Crystal Chronicle games or something. I believe he did do some voiceover work for like Remake, just like additional characters, around the world type shit. I don't know if he's ever credited for that. It's not on his Wikipedia, but I'm fairly certain he did that. I also didn't know, to looking at his Wikipedia just now for this video, that he voiced the character of McCready in Fallout 4, which kind of brings the channel full circle in a way, because Fallout 4 is the entire reason that I created this channel.
And to have an opportunity and be part of 15 as core, it was amazing. And I had a bunch of friends in the cast who were incredible too. So that was a special moment, and what I thought would probably be the peak of it.
Yeah.
I was like, this is enough for me to be happy for a long time.
Yeah.
Just to be part of this.
That's what's so cool about the story of them like casting Matthew Mercer as Vincent Valentine. It's like he was already in the franchise a bit since as far back as 2008. He actually mentions he was in a Chocobo Dungeon game. We've voiced like Treasure Hunter Sid or something. But he thought like the peak of it was core in Final Fantasy 15, and that who knew, like, you couldn't possibly know, but like some years later, he actually get his dream role of voicing Vincent Valentine in the remake project. Crazy.
When the first game's initial character auditions went out, none of them came through my. They must have come through the agency, but I wasn't aware they'd gone through, or I didn't have the opportunity to read for any of the characters. And when I found out when they were announcing the main cast, I was like, oh, I missed that opportunity.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough to be brought in to do some small characters and some background things there, and even that was kind of that was a cool experience in general.
Yeah.
To be part of that.
I just want to play that clip really quickly because I was very certain that he had done like voiceover work for Remake. It's just like smaller characters, and for some reason, that's not on his Wikipedia. I don't know why, but there he is, like talking about it.
Any of the people that I worked with on the first remake game, I was like, just if any of these auditions go out, for, in particular, any of these particular characters, I would very much like the opportunity to read for them. I have no expectations.
Please, Your Honor.
Yeah. I'm actually very curious, and I don't know if he ever talks about this throughout the rest of the video here. What other characters Matt was interested in voicing? Obviously, Vincent's the priority. I would think maybe Sephiroth, because he got like a lot of range for characters he could do, but Sephiroth is already cast with the first game, right? We see Sephiroth all the time in Remake. So I'm very curious what other main characters maybe throughout the FF7 story that Matt would also like to voice, if not Vincent.
I have no expectations, and I'm never the person that will go out of their way to have that awkward moment to go to a casting director and be like, please put me in your thing. Like, I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm not saying put me in it. Just give me the opportunity to prove myself. I'd worked with them on many other projects, and they knew that it was legit, and I was like, just give me the opportunity. And
put me in the game, coach.
Yeah, pretty much. Or at least put me on the bench for a second.
I'll be on the bench. I'll do anything.
I'll sit there. I'll get you water.
I'll clean the floor.
Whatever you need.
I'll scratch your back. What do you need? Anything.
I mean, I hope I wasn't like that. I might have been. I don't know.
That's a pretty good impression of you, to be honest.
Hey, I'm
saying it, man. These guys are funny. Like, they're really good individually in interviews, and they can be funny and good storytellers. But them, like, joking with each other, man, I just love to see it. It goes on to mention how the auditions came through for like Kate Sith, Sid, and Vincent, and he was happy with either of those. So maybe going back to the previous question I had, that maybe he was fine with either of those. If he could have got either of those roles, he was cool with it. But obviously wanted Vincent.
The auditions came through. I remember it was for Kate Sith, or Ketchi, depending on your pronunciation.
I like it.
For Sid and for Vincent. And I was like, honestly, any of these characters would be amazing, but I really want Vincent for a few reasons.
From here, it goes on to tell like a pretty cool story of how him and Steve Bloom are obviously friends, and Steve Bloom was the previous voice actor for Vincent, and they're like him getting the role next would be kind of like carrying on his legacy since they're obviously really good friends.
He's one of my favorite characters in games, and because the previous voice actor for him, Steve Bloom, is a dear friend, and if anything, I also wanted this to be an opportunity to kind of carry his torch into this, and so I put everything into this audition.
I like that perspective because they obviously on the English side of stuff recast everybody for the FF7 remake project, so that means like Steve Bloom couldn't voice the character again, but if he could kind of do it for himself, obviously he wanted to voice Vincent for a long time, but also kind of carry on his friend's legacy. I think it's pretty cool.
And you know this, when you audition for games, there's a process where you usually hear back.
Yeah.
About a month, maybe 2 months, sometimes sooner, sometimes a little after, but after about the 2-month period, it's gone away. It's gone away. But this was the one project that got away. Like, I didn't hear anything for 9 months.
Again, Ben just being effortlessly funny. But yeah, it's kind of crazy that you normally hear back in like a few months as a voice actor, and he didn't get confirmation of being Vincent for 9 months. Imagine that. At that point, you've already given up, right? It's been 2 or 3 months, you haven't heard back, and then it's like 4 or 5, 6, 7 months. It's like, at that point, you're probably not even thinking about it anymore. Maybe in the back of your mind, maybe you're still hopeful, but you haven't heard anything back. It's been more than half a year at that point. It took him 9 months to get confirmation. That's kind of crazy. Maybe they want to keep it like secret. They didn't want anything to potentially leak. Maybe they didn't want to be like totally certain before they confirmed it to him. I don't know. I goes on to talk about how he got the reveal of him playing the role of Vincent, which if you've been in the community for a while, you've probably seen the video of him in studio, like doing voiceover work. It's supposed to be like background characters in Nibelheim or something, and like they act like the computer's glitching or something, and then it reveals to him that he's voicing Vincent. I'll just play the clip.
What the hell is this? No. Are you serious?
And this is one of those moments that's so wholesome. I've seen that I don't know how many times, and just like I got a little bit of chills watching him like learn again that he's be the voice of Vincent Valentine. It's just a great moment. I actually asked him who put that all together and shit, and he actually names the person from like Skylark Studios and stuff, and kind of cool. I never knew who did it.
Did put it together. Can we name and shame them?
I think it was Bob Buckles, the director, and then Rita at Skylark.
Wow.
Both put it together because they knew how much it meant to me because I'm the one who asked about it originally, and they said, yeah, we've known for 9 months, but we had to wait for the scripts to come through and get ready to actually book you for your session, and they decided to mess with me, and I can only respect that.
Actually, there we get confirmation that he was already the voice of Vincent Valentine. They just had to wait like 9 months to actually be able to like tell him and reveal it or something like that. So even though he was waiting 9 months, it wasn't because Square Enix was trying to decide if it should be him or somebody else. He was already the voice at that point.
I go in for an audition on the Friday. I go into audition for a much smaller role. Audition for Tiamat, who's at the beginning of the game. They said, can you read this? I read something else, which was just all of what turned out to be Clive's lines. Then I read them and I left, and the performance director, Morgan Rushton, and Hannah Price at the time were there. I remember Morgan coming up to me and being like, that was amazing. And I went, that's cool. And then 3 days later, I got a call saying, congratulations, you're the lead in a game. A game.
Yeah, still keeping it.
Yeah. And when they gave me more context, they still gave me a code name, but they declassified some of the names. And I saw Ifrit, Sid, and Crystals.
And you're like...
And I went, no. But I was by myself. in my room. In my house. Didn't want to get my I wanted to keep my expectations in check, because what that meant was I was in a Final Fantasy game, but it couldn't be Final Fantasy 16. That couldn't be what it is. That's not happening to me. Then I remember going into the audition and asking one of the producers who was there, I went, is this Final Fantasy 16? He went, it is. And I thought, oh no.
So that's the clip I seen on like Twitter or Instagram, wherever the fuck I saw the clip. It definitely wasn't as long as the segment is up to this point. I'm definitely cutting out a lot of what he's saying. Not that it's necessarily bad, it's just for the sake of the video. But the clip I seen on like Twitter or whatever was like definitely like shorter. But pretty much what I showed here in the video of him like learning that he's going to be playing Clive Rosfield in Final Fantasy 16. It's, again, just hilarious. Ben tells a pretty cool story of, like, there's an iconic line in the game that people gravitate towards where he says, I'll kill you, I'll fucking kill you. And they were going to do that for the first reveal trailer to kind of get across the point that this is an M-rated game. And I guess at some point they changed their mind on that, which is kind of weird because it is an M-rated game. I think that'd been a hell of a marketing push. Like, if I watched that trailer, because I did reactions to a lot of the trailers and stuff for 16, if I would have heard that in a fucking Final Fantasy trailer, the first reveal of the game, that would have definitely been awesome.
Goes quite mad for is the screaming line where Clive says, I will kill you, I will effing kill you. I wanted that to be in the original trailer. So when Final Fantasy 16 was revealed, it was like, wow, this is going to be M-rated and you're going to hear it. So we recorded 2 versions of the line. One was like, I'll kill you, I'll effing kill you, and I'll kill you if it's the last thing I do. Obviously, for reasons, they went with I'll kill you if it's the last thing I do.
To me, that is such like a missed opportunity because at that point, when we're seeing the first reveal trailer for the game, I don't think we knew what the game was rated at that point, right? So it would have been nice to, like, we're watching a trailer, it's another Final Fantasy, that's exciting, but if we'd heard the word fuck in a trailer, that'd have been such a mind-blowing thing. And then the reveal at the end of the trailer where it probably would have said, like, M-rated or something. Man, it's a missed opportunity.
How did you find Vincent? Did you have an idea from when you were a kid that's built up?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So you had it ready years ago.
I spent most of my life voicing all my characters that I play along with. For many years, there weren't voiceovers, so I'd be reading it out loud to a certain degree to myself. My mom comes in and is like, "Are you talking to yourself?" I'm like, "Don't embarrass me in front of me." But like, you know,
go away, Mom.
I know, she's making it weird.
God damn it.
But yeah, I've always had an idea, and then when we got to hear him talk for the first time in Advent Children, and then, you know, in Dirge of Cerberus, and like Steve did such a phenomenal job of hitting this particular note of personality, this kind of this gravelly mystique.
We continue through his discussion of like the Vincent stuff, but I just want to play those clips really quickly of like, for one, Ben being funny, which is hilarious, but also him giving the props to Steve. Like Steve kind of the first person that really brought the character to life.
He's a person transformed, who's shackled by regret, but is a shadow specter of vengeance, and still kind of grasping at what little humanity he has left to hold on for the purposes of protecting those that are still important and still around. And like took a lot of inspiration from his performance too. So it took my idea of the character, what he had already brought to the table, and in that middle ground created something new for this that I feel is honest and true to me, and hopefully honest and true to the character as well.
Yeah.
I think Matt's like the perfect casting for Vincent if we can't get Steve again, right? And obviously they're not going to for the English side of stuff, so you couldn't really ask for a better Vincent Valentine, really. I love what he brought to the character of Vincent in Rebirth. We get a decent little amount with him, right? It's not like too much, too little. It's just right in the perfect amount, which you can really do for a character that's not going to be a playable character in the story yet. I can't wait to see more of the character in the next game. I've said before on the channel, but Vincent's one of my favorites. I don't really talk about him a lot on the channel necessarily, but back in the day, one of my favorite characters. Once I learned that you could get him in the game, he was always a main party. He was always Cloud, Barret, Red 13, learned about Vincent, and I dropped Red 13 for Vincent. That was always my party for the longest time. He's always been one of my favorites, so I cannot wait to get more of Vincent in the next game. So Ben goes on to ask Matt about a date between Vincent and Sid and how that would go, and just such a Ben question to ask, but also it's kind of funny just because there's probably already fanfic of that, like some Rule 34 type shit, right? I imagine it's got to exist by now for Clive and Vincent. And it's just kind of funny to get like an answer for that from the people that voice the actual characters, given the artist's ideas of things to draw.
Okay, I have a very, very important question.
Okay.
If Vincent and Clive were to go on a date, where would they go? What would they do?
If Vincent were planning it, I think he'd find a nice, like, Victorian Gothic cathedral somewhere. He wouldn't go somewhere public, so it'd be a private cathedral, probably like, not quite in the graveyard, that's a little too edgelord, I think, for him, but tangential where it's still dark, but there's beauty. You know, maybe like under a stained glass window. I think he'd make a really terrible picnic.
Great.
Yeah,
He's really proud of it.
Really proud of it.
So proud of it.
But he wouldn't let you know.
Yeah.
But he'd be like asking like, hey, so what do you think? Do you want to open the bottle now? I don't really know wine, so I hope this is fine.
That's lovely. Yeah, thank you so much.
So I have a clock and just pop it off for you.
Thank you. That's delicious.
And
it doesn't taste very nice.
No.
Clive's like, that's so nice. Thank you.
Yeah. He'd be like off looking to the side, like the wind blowing the cloak. He's like, the sommelier said it has notes of oak barrel.
I'm getting the oak. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. If anything, it's almost 90% barrel.
I don't drink, so I brought my own seltzer.
Okay. Seltzer.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't drink since the old days.
I want to know about the old days. I'm going. Tell me about the old days.
Fantastic moment. The voice actors for Clive Rosfield and Vincent Valentine talking about a theoretical date between their characters. Just hilarious.
Clive is the kind of person who would be very nervous about the idea of organizing something. So he would have asked a lot of other people what their ideas about a date would be. So he would probably go around and ask your friends, who would basically ask to do like a little surprise. You wouldn't know that you were going on the date. It would be kind of unexpected. You'd walk in and then Clive would just be there and be like, surprise. You know what? I think it would probably have a view. Clive loves a view. Does the man love a view?
I think Vincent loves a view too. He's very much a perch in the background from a good vantage point person.
Okay, great. Clive's more kind of like a stand in the forefront looking at the view.
The date'll be like from 25 feet from each other.
They won't look at each other. They won't look at each other.
He just perched on the edge with his cloak flowing.
Yeah, and then Clive will just be looking at the view the whole time. And that's what the conversation will be.
Again, another hilarious conversation about how like Clive would plan out a date and how that date would go. These guys are just funny as fuck together. But they trail off into a conversation about how they think each of their respective characters smell. And from both their perspectives, neither character smells good.
He'll just smell him. I've arrived, that musk.
And he has a musk too. He's been in that coffin for a while.
Yeah, but do you think it's a sweet musk? So there's kind of a deep intensity to it?
I don't know. That's a lot of leather. I think he's a musty fella. I think it's. You know what? I'll be kind to him and say it probably has a bit of a smoky smell to it.
Yeah.
Why not? Something more kind of woody.
Great.
What does Clive smell like in your mind?
I've thought about this a lot.
I can tell.
So the moment in the game where Clive inherits his father's old clothes, goes from being in this kind of the shackles of his imperial armor that's kind of defined him over the past 13 years, and he finally has these clothes that free him up. When you think about it, when he inherits them, like, these are your father's old clothes that I've been hiding under the floorboards. That does not smell good. 13 years of musty, like soily, and I love Lady Hannah. Lady Hannah is great, but I don't think she was really tending to them all of the time. So I think there is like this soily kind of thing, but it's kind of so, it's so kind of pungent that it's nice again. It's so intense that it's
gone back around.
It's gone back around.
Gotcha.
Gone back around. If anything, it's a smell that you've never smelled before.
What a conversation. I'll be honest, when I started this video, this is never where I thought the conversation would ever go. I never thought at any point in my life that I'd be hearing the voice actors for Clive and Vincent talking about how their respective characters kind of smell bad.
What's that smell?
It's the soil on my clothes, Vincent.
Smells like father.
It is.
That's a little weird.
It is.
That's got to be the most insane string of words I've ever had to reference on this channel. That conversation right there between Vincent and Clive, talking about Clive's clothes smelling like his damn father.
Okay, Matt, because you're just so much older than me.
Yeah, no, I just
You're just
put
so
it out
much,
there.
just so
I
much
appreciate
older.
that.
Because I'm so young and sprightly.
I know.
And so old and seasoned. Thank you so much. It was lovely helping you up the stairs.
No,
I
that's why I came here. I wanted to make sure to meet the next generation before I turn to Ash.
I'm doing my community service, so it's fine.
Again, I just thought that moment right there was pretty funny. Thought I'd put it in the video. But he's just going to ask Matt about like advice for like him or another like kind of up-and-coming voice actor since he's been doing voice acting for a while.
I mean, a lot of those lessons I think you've learned through the process with Clive, which is to find your limits, respect the collaboration. I think that's an important thing. Some of these will be things you already know, but I think are also important to put out there because performers can be very caught in their own image, you know, and can come to the table not appreciating the collaboration that they've been invited to be a part of. So one, make sure you stop to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, this is such an incredible journey that you've just begun. And I look forward to seeing all the incredible things that you're going to be doing as the years go on and the exciting opportunities I'm going to have to come and high-five you in the middle of it all and celebrate that.
I definitely cut out a bit there, but it is good advice. I figured I'd put that in the video for maybe any sort of like aspiring voice actors out there. If you haven't watched this video yet, the original video, maybe hearing like from a prolific voice actor, some kind of advice if you're just starting out.
You know, you're saying this is advice. Do you feel like you've been able to do that? You've been able to, or do you think there were times before when you wish maybe you had taken stock of what you had?
There are times where I think I wish I did, because especially living in Los Angeles, where the cost of living is very intense and the opportunities in this industry can be very sparse. Oh God, what's next?
Yeah.
That I didn't allow myself the space to be, oh God, this happened now. I've allowed some of that, and I've definitely, you know, part of having this conversation and being part of all this is part of that for me to settle into this as well. But I've allowed myself a little more time to be thankful for the earlier moments as well.
I think it's really good advice kind of for anything. Obviously, everybody's livelihood and lives are different and all kinds of different circumstances. But for the most part, I think the good advice is just to kind of live in the moment. Appreciate what you have now. It can always be better. It can always be worse.
With this comes the community of other amazing creative people that put these games together that we get to bump into and carry with us the rest of our life, with the community of gamers that come and engage with these stories and share in that joy with us. And you have a responsibility as a person in this position to put joy out there.
What I want to do.
Yeah, and so just always keep that in mind. Always remember that you have the opportunity to be a joy maker through this, and that is the most important thing. You know, I'm not worried about you.
Joymakers sounds like a buddy cop show. So do you want to do a buddy cop show with me called The Joymakers?
You give me a call,
it's
man.
a band as well. I feel like there's so many iterations of that.
They can be a band that also moonlights as like buddy vigilantes.
Yeah, and they don't mean to solve crime. It just happens at one of their shows or around. Yeah. They're like,
But then I want more now than like some sort of buddy cop show with fucking Ben Starr and Matthew Mercer, but they got to be their characters though. It's got to be Clive. It's got to be Vincent. And the last bit of the video here is them just kind of like big upping each other and like, thank you for being here. Let's talk more. Let's hang out more. And but Matt Mercer talks about how like much like Ben sees the opportunity because it's kind of his first role, right? But he makes like viral videos all the time. Like he's really leaned into like the Final Fantasy community, right? And he makes content all the time on like Twitter that gets like a shit ton of views, just like funny ass videos. So he's definitely somebody that's like sees the opportunity, gets this big important role, the lead of a Final Fantasy game, and he's definitely running with it. And that is pretty much it for the video, my dudes. I knew it was gonna be long. We're breaking down on an hour video. I was not predicting anywhere near 30 minutes, maybe like the 20-minute mark or something. But here we are. These guys are hilarious. This is a fantastic video. I hope we get more of these in the future with, I don't know who. Part of me wanted, like, I was gonna mention this in the beginning of the video and I didn't. That I wanted like Cody Christian. It'd been nice to have like Cody Christian and Ben Starr talking because they're both the leads of their respective games. But after going through this video, this is what I wanted. This is perfect. Right? These two talking with each other was so fantastic, but I can't wait to see more of these in the future. Anyways, the original video, of course, will be linked in the description below. It's definitely worth a watch. There's a lot that we didn't add. Despite the link to this video, there's obviously still a fuck ton left in the video that's definitely worth watching. I highly recommend it. Anyways, video's long enough. We're going to wrap it up. That's the video. Subscribe to my guys' news. Homework's in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DavidYT. That's it. Bye.
We'll take the rest of this private.
care what people thought. But now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain or leave it like Cobain.